One. Okay. Thanks everybody so much for coming tonight. I truly appreciate it. My name is Ashley. I am the new pre-health advisor here at URI. Previous to being the pre-health advisor, I was a career education specialist here at URI for about 8 years in the Career Center, and I was working with College of Health Science majors. So it is my pleasure to be transitioning into this role. You may have worked with Andy Simmons prior to working with me previously, and Andy has left. He's moved on to a different university, up to Brandeis University up in Massachusetts. And when Andy left, the honors program said, "Hey, Career Center, we think that this belongs here with you." And we said, "Yes, it really does. So please, please give it over to us." So jazzed to be here, and as I'm learning, as I'm going through these processes of diving in deep to things like pre-health, all majors and all disciplines in pre-health, I'm really jazzed, and I'm excited to learn and to build upon that. So all of our information's here. Center for Career and Experiential Education is the very long title for we are the Career Center. So we're here to support you as you are transitioning from undergrad into any profession that you're moving into. We are on Roosevelt Hall, excuse me, first floor. We're on the south side closest to the Union. Um, all of my appointments are available through Handshake, opposed to Starfish. And the reason being is because this position works with recent alumni as well. And so if you graduate and you take time in between your undergrad and pursuing PA, I'm still here to be of assistance for you, and you can access me easier through Handshake. You lose access to Starfish when you graduate. I also do drop-ins through Zoom Mondays, every Monday from 11 to 12. So if you want to pop in and ask a quick question, that's a great way to do that as well. And if there's anything that's on your mind, all of these resources that we covered here today are going to be available to you on our website, uri.edu/prehealth. And we have a whole section dedicated just to PA listed on there. I also wanted to shout out my pre-health peer advisors. They're here today, both Lindsay and Annabella. They are also here if you're like, wow, I don't want to ask Ashley this question. I'm going to reach out to one of my peers who are also going through this very specific thing, whatever that might be, prerequisites. Who should I take for this class? When should I take this class? What do you think about this? They are here to help guide you along that path. Giving some overview, many of you already know this. If you're here, you are most likely already pretty invested in being a PA, physician assistant. But we can take a look at what this definition is. And primarily, PAs work under the supervision of a physician, but they tend to have a high level of autonomy. So usually physicians are like, I just kind of need you to be there to support me. I really don't want to kind of like have you work underneath me. So we're seeing kind of this trend in PA of really truly being the equivalent of what many physicians are doing in many situations. However, the difference here is that physician assistant education, of course, is much shorter, and it is a master's degree opposed to a doctorate degree. And typically, these programs are anywhere between 2 to 3 years after obtaining your bachelor's degree. And you do need to pass the PANCE exam in order to be licensed, in order to be a PA, and that's post your PA program education. I think that this is important, PA versus being a doctor, which could either be MD for allopathic or DO for osteopathic. PA, of course, is faster. It's a little bit more of a flexible route, and it comes sometimes with a little bit of a better work-life balance, just because you are not expected to do as many hours as maybe as a physician. However, if you were like, I want to be able to make my own shots, I want to be able to do my own thing, MD, DO might be a better path, but does require longer training, as well as that comes with student debt. This is important. We want to think about what makes the most sense for me of what I'm looking to do and how it's going to make the most sense for me to get there. Another cool thing is PAs can kind of switch their specialty pretty easily, but doctors need to really think about a specialty and study that specialty, do their clinical rotations within that specialty. So if you're not really sure where you want to practice within the field of medicine, PA might be a better route. However, if independence and leadership are more important to you, PA might not be the best route. Having said that, of course, why wouldn't we want to think about being able to do the same things that physicians can do with a shorter time, less debt? It all makes a lot of sense. This means that PA programs have become extremely, extremely competitive. We can see a little bit of a growth here. I always like to, as a career advisor, talk about the Bureau of Labor Statistics and what those trends are in terms of return on your investment. Is this expected to grow? And we can see that it's expected to grow much significantly faster than other careers. And of course, we talked about the time and the less expensiveness. And this kind of came all about, I like kind of having a little bit of context for those of you who are high in strength and context. The Affordable Care Act back in the early 2000s really kind of helped propel PA off the ground. It's been around since the 1960s, but really the competitiveness and the demand for these programs have kind of come around since the early 2010s to early 2000s. And post-pandemic, of course, we know that many are feeling the burnout. And so PAs have been also kind of a significant help in this field as well. Being competitive. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this at the end of the presentation as well. But this is the thing that I think that you're here for, is to get this question answered, because this is the question that I get from students almost always. You know the prerequisites, they're on the website, the other stuff you can find. The question here is like, am I going to get in? Actually, like, help me discover if I'm going to be a good candidate for this. Am I competitive? And here's what I want to say. There are mainly these 4 buckets that we want to consider. The one that is most important here, you'll notice, is direct patient care experience. PA programs, because different from MD and DO, they are expecting you to come in with a high level of experience to help kind of skip through some of that entry level or elementary coursework. And so they are really hoping that you are coming in with, most programs will say, about 1,500 hours as a minimum requirement, 1,000 to 1,500 hours as a minimum requirement. But on average, our applicants that were accepted or admitted for or interviews or asked to come in for interviews had anywhere between 3,000 to 4,000 hours in patient care. These roles that are most common that we see and tend to be the most popular to gain this sort of experience are listed here. Of course, these are paid positions. However, on the other side of that, tend to be difficult to get that amount of hours in while you're also an undergrad student. This is a lot of hours. It's almost, it's really hard. It's really hard to do. You're balancing a lot of other things as well. 9 times out of 10, we see students take what I am rebranding as a growth year. I hate the term gap year, so you heard it here. First, we are considering growth years to be able to take the time to work full time in any of these areas to build up those hours. And I can say that this is truly the case. I was at Johnson & Wales interview day back in December, and every student that introduced themselves in that room had been at least 1 year out post-graduation, and they have been doing full-time roles in any of these areas. And so this is truly what makes you a competitive applicant and get a seat for an interview when applying. So it's very rare that we see students roll from undergrad right into a PA program because of this requirement. Other things that are helpful in becoming a competitive applicant are gaining as much shadowing experience as possible. So the goal is to shadow as many PAs. Physicians are as great as well, but PAs, for the most part, are recommended. And so we've got those hours listed there. Shadowing multiple PAs in multiple areas is a plus. So dermatology is the most popular area right now within PA. It pays a lot. We understand that this is like a really attractive field right now. But think about trying to shadow PAs in multiple areas if you can. When it comes to reaching out, typically if you, for every 20 to 30 that you reach out to, 20 to 30 PAs, you might hear back from 2 to 3 of them, just because they're busy individuals and they hear a lot of people outreaching and asking about shadowing. So I suggest using your network. If you have a family friend who might know a PA, if you have a contact that you can reach out to, if you are CNA and EMT and you work in a hospital setting, start to use your network there. Start to reach out to your supervisor to connect you to a PA to request some shadowing hours. It's really just a matter of reaching out as much as possible, getting that word out there that you're hoping for shadowing hours. The academic piece, you know where the prerequisites are listed. They are on the website. Most of you are already aware of that. And of course, all of that information is here in the presentation. Most minimum requirement GPAs are 3.0, but we are seeing competitive applicants in and around a 3.6 GPA in the science areas in order to be a competitive applicant. There's sometimes a question around the GRE exam. It's not required for each program. It is gaining popularity and momentum. So it is becoming a little bit more of a recommendation to consider taking the GRE. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. Other areas that aren't required but might be recommended are things like leadership experience. Being involved on campus shows so much about you as an applicant. And it doesn't always have to be managing a team of people. That's not really what we mean here, but that's getting involved on campus through a club or an organization, through athletics, being a tutor, being a TA, being an RA, whether that's a research assistant or a resident assistant. Doing things that kind of show that you're not just going to class and studying, that you're also actively involved in campus goes to show a lot about you and can make you a truly, really competitive applicant. Other volunteer work, including medical scribe, sometimes is a paid position, but we often see it as a volunteer role. And then other things that are listed down here that you might want to consider. One of my favorites is crisis hotlines. We have an amazing one here in Rhode Island called Day One. I've had students do multiple internship experiences there and have had incredible experiences. So something that you can consider there. And then research not always required. We see this a little bit more with traditional medicine pre-med programs, MD and DO. However, it's not necessarily required for PA, but I always say the more experience you can get, the better. So if you have an opportunity to become involved in a research program over the summer, if you have an option to do research with a faculty member that you've made an incredible relationship with, take it. It never hurts to have as much experience on your applications as possible. Now, this is not to say this needs to be a checklist, and every PA admissions committee is going to see right through any candidate that's like, I'm just checking off the boxes because I need to be a competitive applicant. Think about choosing things that are going to fulfill you, that are going to make you excited to go to, that you feel like is going to be a meaningful experience that will help solidify your commitment to being a PA. So it's something I really want to drive home there. What should I major in? The answer truly, I know everybody hates to hear this, but the answer is really anything. No PA program, there are no PA programs that require a specific major, but they do require some pretty heavy science related prerequisite courses. Some applicants will just say, I just need to not worry about adding these in. So I'm going to choose a major here at URI that has the most of these science prerequisites already built in. However, if every PA applicant was always a biological sciences major, that would make for a really boring admitted class. I see students who are double majoring in Chinese and Spanish and applying for opportunities. And it's really something that committees are interested in seeing. Tell me more about why you chose those majors. Why did those speak to you? As long as you're adding in those prerequisite courses, truly you can and should major in what you are most interested in. Every admissions committee is going to be understanding of that, and they're going to think that you might be more of a interesting candidate because you didn't choose the same route that maybe every other applicant is choosing. So truly, any major. I like to try to think about your prerequisite courses as an unofficial double major. There's a wonderful sociology professor who told me that, and I think that that is such a great piece of advice. Use all of the major that you are most interested in and sprinkle in those prerequisites as an unofficial double major. All of those prereqs are listed on the website. My goal is to kind of pick this apart and get some additional details and information here for you. But all of the information you need truly is listed here. So please, this is a clickable link. It goes right to the pre-health website and will go right to this guide. But this is a great thing to always have with you when you're making your academic plan with your academic advisor, to look at your major requirements. If you have multiple majors, if you have minors, if you have concentrations, whatever you have, and making sure that you're making a plan to add in these prerequisites. Again, pre-health is not a major here at the university, so there is no advisor that's going to say, hey, did you think about the pre-health requirements? This is going to be important for you to drive your own path of making sure that you are meeting these prerequisite requirements. Everybody loves a good timeline, right? So a timeline for PA school tends to be about a year and a half. And I didn't put any specific dates, years, times of like junior year, you should be doing this. Because, like I said, we see most of our applicants, most every applicant, not just URI students, not just URI alum, that are taking that growth year in between. So here's what we like to think about. In the spring, thinking about preparing and taking the GRE and preparing for the application process, which is asking for letters of recommendation. We'll get into that in a moment. Writing a personal statement draft with our writing center, talk about that too. List out your direct patient care and other experiences. If you haven't already been tracking these, I hate to use the word journaling, but if you haven't already been keeping track of these in some way, shape, or form, now's the time to do it. Start to jot those down, whether it's a Google Sheet, whether it's an online platform, whatever makes the most sense for you. Start to write down those experiences that you've had within direct patient care and think about the experience as a whole and how it's been impactful for you. This is going to be something that you have to do in your CASPA application, so it's great to start to really brainstorm those things now. And then your other experience as well. I talked about being a tutor here on campus, being an RA, jotting all of those things that you've been involved in down. Your work at a gymnastics studio, your work in customer service at a restaurant, we're putting all of that in there. The more information that a program can find out about you, the better. So we're leaving nothing out. We're being crystal clear in all of the experiences that you've had and not thinking about, oh, well, that's not related, so I'm not going to include that. All of those experiences should and can be included in your application. And then thinking about building a program list. So there, I'm going to have a list of all of the programs that exist here in the US that we can look through. It is truly important to think about which program is going to be a good fit for you. And we'll cover that in more detail in just a moment. Late spring and summer, the CASPA application will open up in late April, and you should plan on applying by July 1. And then from there, it's rolling admissions. And from here, we're continuing to accrue those direct patient care experiences. Late summer, which is about August through winter, December, typically is the last interview cohort. You'll complete interviews at programs and receive decisions. Some programs will start in January, so there could be a chance that you're interviewing in December and starting that January. But usually those programs that start in January will start interviewing a little bit earlier than that. And then in the summer, you would begin your PA program. So if we go back to the first slide here, we can see it takes about one spring to one spring, and then you're starting in the summer, typically. And then program duration is typically between 24 and 36 months. Johnson & Wales is a great example. They are a 24-month program and it is intense. It is a full-time, nothing else. You're not working, you're not doing anything other than going to PA school for a solid 24 months. And then some programs are on the 3-year side that have a little bit more flexibility in there. I do have a full timeline on the pre-health website, and so this does have specific dates in it. And I'm going to scroll down here so you can see. This one would be for a 2026 start, so that would be summer of 26. And so all of that information is here. You're taking the first step here of attending an info session. So all of that information is here, and we'll come back to this in a little bit. Applying in CASPA. CASPA is the central application system for all PA programs. So you are going to create an account in CASPA, and it will allow you to apply to each program that you choose. On average, most applicants apply to between 8 and 12 programs. And when you open your CASPA application, it can take about 1 to 2 weeks to verify your account. So that's just something that you can know that in the back of your head, it isn't always normal to create an account and then have it be verified for 1 to 2 weeks. But this is it's very normal when it comes to applying in CASPA. And the application opens in late April. I always suggest that you plan on applying no later than July 1st so you can get in that first round of interview considerations. The later that students apply, or applicants apply, I should say, the less seats become available for interview slots. Most programs have about 24, 36, 48 seats at the most. And so you are vying for a large amount of interviews for a small program. Your application portal for all PA programs are going to consist of these things listed here. I'm going to go into more detail about all of these pieces, but this is kind of an overview here for you to take a look at. I always recommend that you are researching the programs that you are interested in and making sure that you are meeting the requirements. Those prerequisite requirements that I included are very general. There are some PA programs that are going to have different requirements. Some might require a different level of chemistry. Some might require an additional psych class. This is the time that you want to be incredibly thorough in your research to look at the programs that you're interested in and ensure that you're doing all of the prerequisites, all of the things that you need to do in order to be a successful applicant, a competitive applicant for that specific program. I always like to think too about making your list and organizing it based on location, start date, how competitive it is, the cost, this is important, length of program, and what letters of recommendation are required. We'll talk more about this in just a moment. When it comes to building your program list, oh no, this got cut off here. I'm sorry, I apologize. Yeah, that's about it. But this is the CASPA program directory. This is really helpful to filter out through the programs that are available here in the US. If you wanted to do a map view, sometimes that makes life a little bit easier. So if you know that you're staying in the New England area, we can really start to narrow that down. Many of you I know hail from New York, New Jersey. We have a large population of our students that are from that area. This will help you to really narrow down those types of programs. I'm going to speak to this in just a bit, but we have 2 programs here in Rhode Island, Johnson & Wales University and Bryant University, a few more in the Boston area that many of our students are really interested in applying for. Here, we should make sure that we're clicking on each program that you are interested in and making sure that we are understanding what those requirements are. Going into detail about what the program is, what kind of experience that you'll have as a student there, doing as much research on their website as possible so you are really the expert on those programs that you're applying for. Nope. We really want to think about, instead of just saying, oh, well, I'm from Rhode Island, so I'm just going to apply to the Rhode Island schools. It makes a lot of sense for me. I'm just going to stay local. What about this program sets it apart? So JWU is a good example. They partner with their nutrition majors to work on preventative medicine through food. And so that is a huge piece of their program that they focus in. We want to try to do as much research to know that about each program as possible. So when they say, why this school? Why this program? Instead of being like, well, I've always wanted to live in Cleveland. I thought I'd just give it a shot. You want to know, is Cleveland a place that you want to live in? Is it going to work for you? Do you have family? Do you have connections? Do you have support there? And what about that program sets it apart? Do they have something specific that you're like, this is really why I'm interested mainly in this opportunity? We talked a little bit about the 2 Rhode Island programs. And I'll go into JWU's in a little bit, in here in depth. So here at URI, we do have an affiliation agreement with Johnson & Wales University's PA program. URI, and meaning the affiliation agreement means is that all URI qualified candidates that apply are offered an interview slot as part of the affiliation agreement with each application cycle. As a part of that, all of our candidates will complete the pre-PA assessment form, which is again on my website, so I'll show you that. And you will include JWU as a program that you're planning on applying for as part of your CASPA application. The optimal deadline is May 15th, just because we have a great relationship in making sure that you can get an interview in that first cohort. But the latest is July 1. So this is bumped up just slightly even sooner specifically for JWU. I am hosting, I'm kind of hosting it in my Zoom room, but I've got Katie Spoladoro, who is the admissions rep for the PA program from JWU coming, as well as the program director, Dr. Meehan. He's coming to do a presentation on Wednesday, February 12th from 6 to 7. It will be here again in my Zoom room, and that's listed on Handshake, so you can see that there. If you're interested in JWU, I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that you make every attempt to attend that. Again, I will record that so you can have access to it, but it is important to learn as much as possible about JWU so you can be as competitive as possible. They have a brand new building. It's absolutely beautiful there. I got the chance to go tour it in December. It's great. Letters of recommendation. I get this question a lot. Requirements here is that CASPA requires a minimum of 3, maximum of 5. Schools will have their own requirements for these. So again, this is really where you want to look at each program and understand what their requirements are before you start asking for letters. However, on the average, typically, they are between 1 to 2 science faculty members. So faculty that you've taken here within a science course at URI, they should be familiar with you. So instead of getting a letter that's like, Ella was great, she got an A, she came to every class, they should be able to be familiar with who you are in your work ethic, whether that's through research that you did with them, lab work, the coursework that you were able to do. How can they speak to who you're going to be as a student and your strong work ethic in and outside of the classroom? And then 1 to 2 healthcare providers. So this can be from shadowing, this can be from your direct patient care experience. And some programs will ask for a letter from a PA. So again, this is where you want to try to do as much research into the programs that you're applying for as possible so you understand what you need. Some other suggestions are things like mentors, supervisors, if you've done internship experiences, if you've had an incredible working relationship with an academic advisor, if you were a mentor or a tutor in the AEC and you have an incredible incredible working experience with one of the staff members there. See if there's somebody who can write you a letter that speaks to who you are, your work ethic, and what you might be like as a student in a PA program, as well as maybe as a PA. So we talked a little bit about quality. Give each of your letter writers the guide. I have that on my website about what your letter should consist of and how it should be delivered. All of your letters ideally should be on an official letterhead. So a URI official letterhead for URI. If it's a PA from Brown University Health, it should be on letterhead. As a PDF with their official signature included. In that letter guide has some content about what should be included there. And all of those letters are submitted electronically through CASPA. Personal statement is a large piece of this as well. The tricky part that most students run into is that staying under 5,000 characters, it's easy to get swept away in a personal statement. But this is a great place to include something that's maybe not elsewhere in your application. So this could be your soft skills, like your communication, your maturity level, those different areas there. And we do have a workshop coming up with our writing center, and that's happening again. All of these are through Zoom to try to be as accessible and easy to jump into as possible. And that's happening Tuesday, March 4th from 5 to 6 here on Zoom again. And that's all listed on Handshake. When it comes to writing your personal statement, the answer that the question you are trying to answer is, why are you interested in being a physician assistant? You would be surprised how many people miss the mark on being able to answer this question. Use this time to show something that they can't see in your application elsewhere. Your transcripts are going to show your grades. Your personal essays are going to show other pieces about who you are and your work experiences. This is a time to really make it personal. What kind of experiences have you been able to encounter that have fostered that decision to be a PA? That could be a point in your life, that could be multiple experiences, but driving it back to what made you want to be a PA and how did you know that it was your passion? In the CASPA application, you're going to have a place to add all of your work activities. We talked a little bit about your patient care experience, but also you're going to include all of the things that you've been involved in: on-campus involvement, leadership, significant hobbies, research, teaching, type of activity. You'll list that here in what it was, the hours that you did it. And so you'll give kind of an overview of what those experience details were, and should be around 600 character description. There's a template on the website that you can pre-write everything, but you can also open up a CASPA application and just kind of poke around in there and see what it's all about, to kind of see what you'll be adding in there. Other pieces of the CASPA application to consider. There are a lot of words on this slide, and I apologize, there is no easy way to do this, but it's going to be your academic history. You'll enter in every course that you've taken from every university, meaning if you've transferred here from a different university, you're including all of your coursework from another university. It will compute multiple GPAs for you. The ones that are going to be the most impactful as a competitive applicant are your cumulative GPA and your BCP, which is your science GPAs there. And you will have to order your official transcripts from Enrollment Services and send those through CASPA. And that goes for any other university that you've transferred in from. And so if you think is now a good time to start to reach out to request those, you might as well get those taken care of now. That's really easy to do on Enrollment Services website. You just type it right in there and they send it right to you. It's super simple. Supplemental essays. So this sometimes is referred to as secondary application. But a common question is, why do you want to come to this school? We talked a little bit about this before, but I really want to drive this home. Researching the program as in-depth as you can, thinking about connecting the school's strengths to your goals, making it personal and not generic, and demonstrating your fit and contribution. So we know that this is going to be a great opportunity for you. I talked about this with my students applying for grad school a lot. How are you going to be a positive contribution to this program? What are you going to bring that's going to make the program better? How are you going to use your strengths to contribute? If that's research, if that's part of the nutrition program, if that's XYZ, what do you feel like you can bring and make a positive impact as a part of this program? Back to the GRE. Most programs don't require it, but it might be a good idea just to keep your options open. If you are planning on doing this, I suggest committing 10 to 12 weeks to study for the exam. You want to review the different question types in the different areas here. And there's a lot of free resources around studying for the GRE. I usually suggest Kaplan and Blueprint are the top ones, but I like Jack Weston too because it's free, as well as Khan Academy. It has some great resources as well. And then the score is ideally around the 50th percentile, and we'll look at some scores on another slide, but it's good to know about the GRE there if you are considering it. Post-application in CASPA, here are the outcomes. And here is what you can see and what you can expect after you apply. So you'll receive either, so for your outcomes, after you apply, you'll see either if you've been accepted for an interview, if you've been rejected, or if there's no decision. Some schools are more organized and put together than others and more transparent, so you'll hear back from ones sooner than the others. But then post your interview, you'll see the same decisions posted right on the portal there of admit, waitlist, and reject. Truly, waitlist is not something to be concerned about. It is truly depending on spots because it's a lottery system, or not a lottery system, it's a traffic system. So if Ella applied and was accepted, and so was Lily, but Lily hasn't responded yet, Lindsay might get waitlisted because now we just don't know who's going to accept which spot. And so it goes through traffic rules that way. So waitlist is truly not a rejection. It is really kind of a acceptance based on if we have a spot. And so that was what I was told at JWU, and it truly is the case for sure. August through April, so schools with January starts will typically interview the earliest, so you'll hear back from those schools earlier. And then schools, we talked about having their own procedures. Some are more transparent and organized than others. So don't take it personally. There are just some schools that are better with communication than others. Interview days. So if you are accepted for an interview, invited for an interview, you can expect a variety of some of these things. There might be a mix of virtual and in person. And those formats might vary. There might be a personal one-to-one interview. There might be multiple mini interviews. There might be a panel, might be group interviews. But for nothing else, you'll learn about the program. You'll get to meet faculty, staff, and other students that are currently enrolled in the program. You might receive a real world scenario. So it might be a video that you have to watch and then break it into groups and talk about how you would handle that scenario. Or you might have a written sample that you have to respond to as part of your interview. The thing I like to keep in mind is everybody is listening from the moment you check in until the minute you leave. So think about always maintaining professionalism at your interview day. It's a long day, it's exhausting, it's a lot, but there are people there that are meant to help kind of understand your readiness. And this is important to remember as you're going through the day. Things to remember, I like to suggest arriving 15 to 30 minutes early for an in-person interview day. You typically have to do a check-in process, get settled, and especially if you're going into a city location, making sure that you have plenty of time to find parking, walk to where you need to be. If it just snowed, if it's pouring rain in the summer, having plenty of time. If it's virtual, dress professionally, make sure that you have strong internet and an appropriate background that's not too busy. There's not people interrupting you, coming and going. And then always think about sending thank yous post your interview to showcase your interest to all of the people that you meet. They take a lot of time out of their day to interview you to see if you're a good candidate. And so sending your thanks for their time is going to just elevate your candidacy that much more. And then practice. So we have an awesome interview module on the Career Center's website, but also practice with me, practice with the pre-health peer advisors, drag your friends and family into this, make them listen to you. Do as much practice as possible because you may think that you know exactly what you want to say, but when you're under pressure and you're with people you don't know and you've had a long day, that answer might not come across as clearly. So practice, practice, practice. You have plenty of resources available for you for that. We talked a lot about competitiveness. PA programs are extremely, extremely competitive. I don't say this in order to discourage you, but I do like to put it out there so that there is nothing that you could be like, well, Ashley, you didn't tell me how competitive of a process this truly is. We talked about direct patient care experience, talked about GPA, talked about the popularity of the career in and of itself. It's a no-brainer as to why people would be interested in PA as a career, but every PA program wants to know that you are dedicated to this, not being a physician, not being a neuroscientist, not being a mental health clinician. They want to know that you are committed to PA, and not only that, that you're going to succeed in PA school. It's very difficult as a science program to be a PA. And so they are truly looking at all of this. These requirements are set up to make sure that you will be successful. If you start in PA school and don't finish, you have a ton of debt with a career that you can't pay off. My goal, PA program's goal, is that you apply one time and that you get through the one time. So if you look through all of this and you're like, I am not ready, I don't feel like this is going to be right for me now, it might be next year, and that's okay. I'm here. I'm here to support you through that process, but I want you to be as successful as possible. Be organized and do your research on each program. I've said this maybe in 3 different slides, and this is important. You should know the programs that you're applying for and how you meet those prerequisites. Each program that you're applying for should feel like you are their top choice. You want to make sure that you've said, I've done my research on this program and I really want to come here. It is going to increase your chances that much more in the interview process. Some numbers. Ugh, I hate this part, but here it is. Here are our accepted applicants from URI from 2017 through 2023. As we're looking at this table, it's split into cumulative GPA, the science BCP GPA, and then the right-hand side goes into the GRE, which is not required. So I'm going to let you go through that on your own. But I do want to look through the GPA pieces of this for the average GPAs that we see. And that ranges from what we see from the 25th percentile that were admitted, the median, and then the 75th percentile. So we can kind of gather from this that in order to be accepted for an interview, we're looking at a GPA of around a 3.5 or higher as, kind of the 25th percentile bottom piece of this. The average that's listed there, and then the higher end of the 70th, 75th and higher percentile numbers. And then of course we can see the GRE scores over here to the right as well. I'd like to take this time to open it up for questions. I strongly suggest that you take a look at the website at those prerequisites that are listed here. Appointments are available through Handshake. I do have drop-ins through Zoom every Monday from 11 to 12. Those are really meant for quick 15-minute questions. If we want more time together, I suggest putting a 30-minute appointment through Handshake. But of course, you can always email our wonderful pre-health peer ambassadors, Lindsay and Annabella as well. They are wonderful to talk to. If you're like, Ashley really scared me. I don't know. What questions do we have, everybody? If any that we can think of. Feel free to throw them in the chat. I have a 6-year-old. If you can't hear her out there, she's not thrilled about bath time. So
Hi.
Yeah, go for it.
That was a great presentation. Thank you.
Oh, good.
I wanted to know if you have any input on if or is this even a thing, like PA schools in Europe, or would they be an option or even valid in America? I just wanted to know your input on that, if that's even a thing.
Valerie, that's a great question and something that I haven't encountered yet. I just started the role in November, so I'm still trying to learn as much as I can about PA programs here to really be as in-depth as I can for these programs. It's worth looking around. Take a look through the professional associations for PAs. Take a look at, that's what I always suggest. If I'm unfamiliar with a career, an industry, I say, let's do it. Let's roll up our sleeves and look at these professional associations together and do this research. The answer is usually always out there. It's just kind of plugging and doing some digging. But for sure, something to consider. A lot of times, and this kind of applies for medical school, what I've heard is that most med schools admissions committees do not want you to be doing your clinical work internationally. There's just different requirements a lot of times when it comes to healthcare in different countries and what they're looking for clinical work. So I can speak to that piece a little bit, but for sure it's worth it to look into programs internationally and see if it might be a good fit for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Valerie.
I just had a quick question for you.
Yeah, of course.
So after looking in the CASPA, I saw that for shadowing experience, you kind of have to put the start date, the end date, and then how many hours a week that you shadowed. But if it was only like a few days over a course of, say, like 6 months, how would
Yeah.
you suggest putting that in?
Yeah, I would put the start date, Mariana, and the end date throughout that whole 6 months. And then you're explaining in the box. I was able to shadow over spring break, throughout winter J term, and then again over the summer periodically throughout this entire span, and kind of give a definition and a little bit more of an explanation in there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. These are great questions, everybody.
I have a question.
Sure.
So would you say that like whatever schools you apply to, they're kind of like, I don't know, I've heard this from some people that they kind of are expecting you to like stay after you graduate in that area. Like they'll ask you if you plan to stay in that state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Brooke, this is a bigger issue, and it's because there is a shortage of primary care almost everywhere. Rhode Island is huge about this right now, and so a lot of times they are hoping that if you are planning on relocating to that and committing to that program, that they are kind of producing healthcare providers that are going to stay in that state to help kind of help with that shortage. So you might hear that from states that are particularly going through that. Rhode Island is definitely one of them for sure, but it's something to consider. Yeah, for sure. And if you are like, oh my gosh, no, I would never stay in Cleveland. Absolutely not. It's something to really consider and making sure, because as you're going through the program, you are in it, right? This is like you are there from 8 to 5 almost every single week out of the year of the 2 to 3 years that that you're in PA school. So you become extremely close with your cohort members. You create a bond. A lot of it is, it could be trauma bonding, but you create this bond that is going to be incredible, and it might impact your decision of, am I going to stay here because now I have this incredible network of people that I don't ever want to leave. I've done my clinical coursework at hospitals in these areas. I've created these incredible opportunities for myself, and that might really truly impact what your decision is. And so that is going to be important for you to know about yourself. And if you're like, oh my gosh, no, I would never live in Kansas City, then you might not want to consider applying there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Wait, tell me, Brooke, though, are you nervous to apply to something?
Well, I'm like interested in applying to JWU, but I'm not sure if I necessarily want to stay in Rhode Island for my whole life. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't want
Yeah.
that to be a factor of like if
I
they
mean, you
ask
don't,
in the interview.
yeah,
Like,
I mean,
oh, you know what I mean?
you don't have to stay here your whole life, but they are going to
Right.
hope that you stay here for a little while, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think they would ask like in the interview, like, oh, do you plan to stay here? Like
Yeah,
with all schools you apply to, like in the interview?
they can ask you anything, really. And so
Hmm.
it's something to be prepared for. Yeah,
Okay.
great question.
Okay,
I
thank you.
sat in on the interview days, and one of the clinical faculty members at JWU, he was in the military, and so he did a lot of his training in Alaska, and he's been all over the place. And he was like, Rhode Island is kind of where we decided to settle. And he talked a little bit about that. And it's interesting to have some of those conversations. But that was based on a question he had asked an applicant. So it definitely can come up. It's a good question. All right, everybody. My goal is not to scare you. I hate to be like, here's the numbers and here's what you need to consider. But moving down this path truly is a tunnel vision of PA. And so if you're on the fence, if you're not sure, it's always better to wait than to rush into it and to do more research around it so you feel as prepared and as competitive as a candidate as possible. We do have that upcoming personal statement writing workshop happening March 4th. We also have our JWU info session happening in about 2 weeks, February 12th, and both of those are through Zoom. I strongly encourage you to attend those so you can, again, feel as informed and ready to apply as possible. And of course, if you have any questions, you know where to find me. I'm going to put my email in the chat. But also, I strongly recommend reaching out to both Lindsay and Annabella. They have been in your seat. They have started this process already. They've taken most of the prerequisites, if not of all of them. They can give you good advice about who to take, when to take it, what this looks like, what you should be considering, better than me, right? Because I can advise you, and I'm here to guide you. I'm a career advisor. It's my passion. It's what I've been doing my whole life. But I'm not a PA, and I'm not going through these prerequisites, but your peer advisors are. And so they are really great people to connect with and talk to you about things. Well, thank you for your time, everybody. I truly appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, visit the website, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.